All right, so today we're going back in time to ancient Israel. We're diving into real estate.
Oh, really?
Well, not just any real estate we're talking about, the Promised Land. We're looking at the Book of Numbers and how it dictated who got what and why it mattered.
It's interesting, isn't it? We think of real estate, we think plots of land, but here it's so much more. You know, these chapters and Numbers we're going through, they almost read like a nation building guide from scratch.
Right, like their how-to nation build handbook, but with divine instructions instead of city planners. And they were incredibly detailed.
Yeah.
Numbers chapter 34, wow. It's like they had ancient surveyors mapping out every single nook and cranny. We're talking deserts, specific mountains, even the Salt Sea marked out the borders. I mean, they weren't messing around.
It highlights just how important land was to them. I mean, think about it. These people had been wandering in the desert for generations.
Yeah.
Land meant putting down roots, security,
Yeah.
after all that wandering. But even more, it represented their identity, their connection to God's promise. This wasn't just claiming territory. This was about their very existence.
It's like their history, their present, their future, all tied to this land.
Absolutely.
This inheritance wasn't just some property deed. It was everything.
It really was.
And it makes you wonder, when your entire world, your security, even your connection to the divine is tied to this physical place, this piece of land, how does that shape how you see things? Even your relationship with your neighbors.
Right. Because it's not like they were settling an empty continent. They had other tribes, potential rivals, right?
Yeah.
All vying for their own piece of the pie.
Huh.
And when resources are scarce, things can get complicated quickly.
Absolutely.
And this system, with land at its center, it could both unite and divide. On the one hand, you can see how strong bonds would form within those allotted areas. You know, everyone's fate, their success, tied to the land itself. But at the same time, it sets the stage for potential conflicts with your neighbors over those resources, right?
Okay, so we've got the promised land all divided up, people putting down roots, but we've also got this potential for tension. So what happens when those tensions erupt? Well, the ancient Israelites had a plan for that too, Cities of Refuge. But we'll dive into that right after.
Cities of Refuge.
They sound like something out of fantasy, don't they?
Yeah.
But this was their reality. Okay, so picture this. You're just going about your day, maybe tending your sheep, chopping some firewood, and suddenly, bam, accident. You accidentally kill someone. Not on purpose, a complete mishap.
Right.
What happens? In ancient Israel, you, my friend, would need to run for your life to the nearest city of refuge.
Because you see, in their world, even accidental death, it could trigger this chain reaction.
Oh, yeah.
The victim's family, right? Driven by grief,
Yeah.
the sense of obligation. They might feel compelled to avenge their loved one.
It makes sense.
And that could easily escalate into this cycle of revenge killings, tearing apart their entire society.
So it's like these cities, they were a way to just hit pause to prevent that immediate, retaliation.
Exactly. These cities, 6 of them, they were strategically placed throughout the land, offered sanctuary, provided a safe haven for someone accused of manslaughter to make their case.
Interesting. To like a jury or something.
Not to just a single person, to the entire congregation
Wow.
and the high priest.
Talk about a high-stakes trial. So they'd plead their case, but what were they actually judged on? Like if it was an accident, were they automatically off the hook?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
Mhm.
The congregation had to determine whether the killing was intentional or truly accidental.
Oh, I see.
If they deemed it accidental, the person was granted asylum within the city walls.
Okay.
But
Uh-oh.
they had to stay there until the death of the high priest.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't exactly a get out of jail free card. It sounds like a pretty intense period of confinement, but also a chance for things to cool down, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gave everyone involved time and space to process what had happened, preventing a rush to judgment or revenge. And it shows you how important it was for them to maintain balance between upholding justice, but also acknowledging that not all killings, even ones with tragic consequences, were intentional acts of violence.
It really makes you think about their justice system in a whole new way, doesn't it? It wasn't just about punishment. It was about understanding,
Yeah.
protecting life, and preventing further bloodshed.
Exactly. And it reveals something else, too, something kind of profound about their values.
Yeah.
They recognize the sanctity of life, the need for justice, but also the importance of mercy and communal harmony.
Okay, so we've seen how the ancient Israelites divided their land.
Right.
We even looked at the cities of refuge.
Yeah.
But buckle up, because now we're diving into inheritance laws,
Right.
and it's not always as simple as it sounds.
It's true. It really reveals how important it was for them to keep things balanced,
Yeah.
between individual situations and the bigger picture, their whole social structure, their tribes.
You're really setting this. Okay, so let's meet Zelophehad's daughters.
Okay.
Zelophehad passes away,
Right.
sadly, but not exactly uncommon. Right.
Happens.
Here's the thing. He only had daughters, 5 of them. And back then, land meant power. Inheritance usually went through the sons. But these women,
Yeah.
they were not about to let tradition stand in their way. They took their case all the way to Moses.
Bold move.
And you know what? They won.
No way.
Imagine that these women challenging the system and winning the right to inherit their father's property. It really says a lot about their determination and how even ancient systems could adapt.
Yeah. That's amazing. So they got the land. Just like that.
Well, not exactly. There was a catch. To inherit, the daughters had to marry within their own tribe.
Oh, okay.
Remember, we've talked about how central land ownership was to their identity, to belonging to a tribe.
Right. Yeah.
It was about keeping those ancestral ties strong.
So it's like they were trying to walk this tightrope between individual rights and keeping the whole social order intact. Makes you wonder, was it a compromise or just a necessary rule? Or maybe a little of both.
It's a great question. And it really gets at the heart of their legal thinking, trying to honor tradition but also deal with a situation they'd never faced before.
Fascinating.
And get this, the story of Zelophehad's daughters, it actually set a precedent. It showed that even within a system bound by divine law, there was still room for flexibility, for interpretation, even change.
It really makes you think about the why behind the laws, how individual lives, individual circumstances can shape a whole society.
Absolutely. And, even thousands of years later, those stories, they still have something to teach us. They offer a glimpse into a world both familiar and totally different from our own. It's been quite a journey today, hasn't it?
It really has. From dividing up land to those cities of refuge to inheritance laws, we've covered a lot.
We've seen how these ancient texts grapple with justice and mercy and those age-old tensions between the individual and the community. But one of the biggest takeaways,
What's that?
the next time you come across a law or a custom or even just a rule that seems strange, outdated, remember this. There's a story behind it, a story worth knowing, and a story that might surprise you with just how relevant it still is even after all these years.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.